I'm Marcus Chin, 34, a former Navy logistics officer who now works as a financial analyst. For years, my family has rolled their eyes at what they call my military discount lifestyle, using coupons, shopping at thrift stores, driving my reliable but aging Honda Civic, and choosing practical over flashy. Last month's family barbecue, my sister Jessica actually laughed when I pulled out a coupon for the restaurant we were going to. Like Marcus and his poverty mindset, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. My parents just shook their heads in that familiar way that said they were disappointed but not surprised. What they didn't know was that while they were financing luxury cars and taking on credit card debt for designer clothes, I had been quietly building something extraordinary. The discipline I learned in the military, combined with those same frugal habits they mocked, had created an investment portfolio worth more than all their combined assets. The moment of truth was coming, and it would change everything about how my family saw success, sacrifice, and the real meaning of financial security. The discharge papers still sit in my desk drawer, crisp and official despite being nearly 8 years old. Honorable Discharge Logistics Specialist, Second Class Marcus Chen. Those words mean more to me than any family business award ever could. I enlisted at 18, much to my parents' horror. While Jessica was starting her marketing degree at USC, I was learning how to optimize supply chains on a destroyer in the Pacific. My father called it throwing my life away. My mother just cried. But the Navy taught me something my family's restaurant success never could: the true value of discipline and resource management. Every meal, every supply requisition, every piece of equipment had to be accounted for, optimized, maximized. Waste wasn't just inefficient, it was dangerous. When you're responsible for feeding 300 sailors with a fixed budget, thousands of miles from shore, you learn to make every dollar count. The military showed me that real strength isn't about appearances or status symbols. It's about having systems, backup plans, and the discipline to stick to your principles when everyone around you is telling you you're wrong. My shipmates didn't care if your clothes came from the commissary or if you drove a used car. They cared if you could do your job and watch their backs. When I transitioned to civilian life, I carried those lessons with me into my career as a financial analyst. The same methodical approach that helped me manage million-dollar supply budgets now helps me evaluate investment opportunities and manage risk portfolios. The same discipline that got me through boot camp keeps me investing consistently. Even when markets are volatile, my family never understood the transition. They saw my choice to leave the military as admitting failure and my subsequent ordinary job as settling for less. They expected me to come crawling back to the family business, ready to fall in line with their vision of success. They couldn't see that I had found something far more valuable than their approval: a system that worked, principles that guided me, and the confidence that comes from truly understanding the difference between looking successful and actually being successful. The military had given me a foundation they couldn't shake, no matter how hard they tried. The golden plaque hangs in my parents' office like a shrine. Restaurant Association Excellence Award. Chen's Golden Lotus Chain. 15 locations across Southern California, built from my grandfather's single noodle shop in Chinatown. It represents everything my family believes defines success. My parents, David and Linda Chen, built their empire through relentless work and calculated risks. Dad expanded aggressively in the 90s, leveraging property values and banking relationships. Now Mom handled operations with an iron fist, ensuring quality remained consistent across all locations. Together, they created something genuinely impressive, a multi-million-dollar business that employed over 200 people. Jessica was born to inherit this legacy. Even as a child, she had an intuitive understanding of brand image and customer psychology. By high school, she was redesigning our restaurant logos and suggesting menu modifications that actually increased profits. Her marketing degree was just a formalization of talents she'd been developing since childhood. She's everything my parents wanted in a successor: charismatic, ambitious, and completely committed to the family vision. At 31, she's already the director of marketing for the entire chain, pulling in a 6-figure salary and bonuses tied to restaurant performance. Her Instagram account showcases a lifestyle of designer clothes, exotic vacations, and networking, events that generate actual business connections. From the outside, Jessica embodies success. She drives a leased BMW, lives in a downtown loft, and can expense business dinners at the city's most exclusive restaurants. Her social media presence generates real marketing value for the family business, and her networking has opened doors. 2. Expansion opportunities. I was supposed to be her partner in this empire. The plan was always for both children to take over different aspects of the business, Jessica handling marketing and expansion, me managing operations and finance. Instead, I chose a path they couldn't understand or respect. The family gatherings became exercises in subtle disappointment. Jessica's accomplishments were celebrated with toasts and proud stories shared with friends. My military service was mentioned reluctantly, if at all. My civilian career was discussed in the same tone reserved for unfortunate medical diagnoses. But there was something my family's success story couldn't account for: the difference between revenue and profit, between looking wealthy and building wealth. Their restaurant empire generated impressive gross numbers, but the overhead debt service and constant reinvestment requirements meant the actual cash flow was far more modest than appearances suggested. I saw the financial statements. During family meetings, I understood the leveraging that made their expansion possible. What they called success, I recognized as a high-stakes game where they were always one recession, one major equipment failure, or one lease dispute away from serious trouble. They built something impressive, something that commanded respect and generated genuine pride. But they also built something fragile, something that required constant attention and carried constant risk. They couldn't understand why I would choose security over legacy, stability over status. What they never realized was that I wasn't rejecting their success. I was building my own version of it, one that didn't require their approval or their understanding. The first investment account statement is still tucked in my filing cabinet. Opening balance, $500. It seemed laughably small at the time, but it represented something profound: my first step toward financial independence built on my own terms. I opened that account 3 weeks after my discharge, using money I'd saved during my final deployment, while my shipmates spent their liberty. Money on bars and souvenirs. I was researching index funds and reading everything I could about compound interest. The Navy had taught me about systems and discipline. Now I needed to apply those lessons to building wealth. The learning curve was steep, but fascinating. One spent months studying market fundamentals, reading annual reports, and following financial analysts whose track records I could verify. Unlike my family's restaurant business, which required constant active management and physical presence, investing offered the possibility of truly passive income growth. My strategy was deliberately simple and systematic. I focused on broad market index funds with low expense ratios, understanding that I was essentially buying small pieces of America's most successful companies. Every month, regardless of market conditions, I invested exactly 40% of my after-tax income. When markets dropped, I saw opportunities to buy more shares at lower prices. When they rose, I celebrated my growing balance while maintaining my investment discipline. The military had taught me to think in terms of mission, objectives, and tactical execution. My mission was financial independence. My tactics were consistent: investing, minimal fees, and letting compound interest work over time. I wasn't trying to get rich quick or beat the market. I was building a foundation that would support me for decades. My colleagues at the financial services firm were impressed by my analytical approach, but puzzled by my conservative lifestyle. They made more money than I did, but they also spent more money. Company happy hours, expensive suits, lease payments on luxury cars, all the trappings of success that seemed to consume their paychecks as quickly as they earned them. I watched them carefully, learning as much from their mistakes as from their successes. The ones who truly built wealth weren't the ones with the flashiest lifestyles. They were the ones who lived below their means and invested the difference. The ones who looked successful often had impressive incomes but negligible net worth. During my first year of investing, my portfolio grew to $8,000. The second year, $18,000. By year 3, had crossed $30,000 and was beginning to see the power of compound growth. Each milestone felt like a small victory, proof that my system was working. My family remained oblivious to these achievements. They saw my modest apartment, my reliable Honda, my careful spending habits, and concluded I was struggling financially. When I skipped expensive family dinners or declined to join them on their lavish vacations, they interpreted it as evidence of my limited resources rather than strategic choices. The irony was beautiful in its simplicity. While they worried about my financial situation, I was systematically building exactly the kind of security they thought I lacked. Every dollar they spent on appearances was a dollar I was investing in my future. Every sacrifice they thought represented failure was actually an investment in freedom. But I wasn't just building money, I was building confidence. Each month's investment, each year's growth, each small milestone reached was proof that I could create something meaningful through discipline and patience. The military had taught me that real strength comes from systems, not spectacular gestures. My investment portfolio was becoming the ultimate expression of that philosophy. The receipt is wrinkled now, but I kept it as a reminder. Men's suit. Brooks Brothers, $15. I found it at an estate sale in Pasadena. It's barely worn, perfectly tailored for someone exactly my size. It was better quality than anything I could have afforded new, and wearing it to my cousin's wedding probably. Saved me $300, Jessica noticed immediately. Nice suit, Marcus. Very ... vintage. The way she said it made vintage sound like a disease. Thanks, I replied, genuinely pleased with the find. Brooks Brothers, barely worn. Where did you get it? She asked, and I could see the calculation. In her eyes, estate sale. $15. The look on her face was priceless, a mixture of horror and pity that I'll never forget. She actually stepped back slightly, as if my thrift store success might be contagious. That night, her Instagram story featured a photo of herself in a designer dress, with the caption, "Investing in quality pieces that last. Life's too short for." Discount fashion, #success, #investment, #quality. The passive-aggressive dig was clear to anyone who knew our family dynamics. Mom pulled me aside at the reception. "Marcus, honey, you know we'd be happy to help you get some nice clothes." You're representing the family now. "I'm fine, Mom. The suit looks good." It's not about looking good. It's about, she paused, searching for the right words. It's about showing people you're successful. Image matters. Dad was more direct. "Son, you're a financial analyst. You should understand the importance of professional appearance. People judge you by how you present yourself." They weren't wrong about image mattering in professional settings, but they missed the fundamental point. I was optimizing for net worth, not appearance. Every dollar I didn't spend on clothes was a dollar invested in my future. The suit looked great, cost almost nothing, and freed up money for investments that would compound over decades. The mockery became a pattern. Family dinners where I'd use coupons became opportunities for eye rolls. Helpful suggestions about budgeting apps. When I drove my Honda to family events, while Jessica arrived in her BMW, the contrast was noted with the kind of gentle disappointment, reserved for family members who weren't living up to their potential. Marcus and his poverty mindset became Jessica's favorite phrase. She'd say it laughingly, as if it were an endearing quirk rather than a criticism. But I could see the real concern in my parents' eyes. They genuinely believed I was struggling. That my military service had somehow broken my ability to pursue normal success. The truth was exactly the opposite. My poverty mindset was actually an abundance mindset focused on long-term wealth building rather than short-term status signaling. While they were spending money to look successful, I was building actual success. While they were concerned about my image, I was focused on my net worth. But explaining this would have required revealing my investment strategy. I wasn't ready for that conversation. Let them think what they wanted. Their opinions about my lifestyle choices would matter a lot less when they saw the results of those choices. Besides, there was something satisfying about their misconceptions. Every time they worried about my financial situation, I was reminded of how well my actual financial situation was developing. Their concern was inversely proportional to my success. The more they worried, the better I was actually doing. The lease agreement sits in my files. Like a badge of honor. Studio apartment minus 450 square feet, $1,200 a month. Most people would see it as evidence of limited means. I saw it as strategic optimization. While Jessica was paying $3,500 for her downtown loft and my parents were carrying mortgages on their McMansion, I was living in a perfectly functional space that met all my actual needs. Kitchen, bathroom, sleeping area, workspace, everything essential for daily life. Nothing superfluous. The money I saved on housing went straight into my investment accounts. My family visited exactly once. Mom looked around the small space with barely concealed dismay. "Honey, this is so ... compact. Are you sure you're comfortable here?" "It's perfect for my needs," I replied, and I meant it. The apartment was clean, well organized, and strategically located near public transportation. My commute was shorter than Jessica's, despite her supposedly premium location. Dad examined my 10-year-old Honda in the parking lot like a doctor assessing a terminal patient. Son, this car has seen better days. What's your plan for replacement? It runs great. Regular maintenance. Reliable transportation. I'll drive it until the repair costs exceed its value. But what about ... impressions? Professional image? They couldn't understand that my professional image was built on competence and results, not status symbols. My colleagues respected my analytical skills and work ethic. My clients trusted my financial advice because it consistently generated positive returns. Nobody cared about my car or apartment once they saw my track record. The sacrifices were deliberate and calculated. While Jessica posted photos of expensive brunches, I meal prepped on Sundays with ingredients from discount grocery stores. While she updated her wardrobe seasonally, I maintained a small collection of quality, versatile pieces that mixed and matched efficiently. While she spent weekends at spas and shopping centers, I spent them hiking, reading, and researching investment opportunities. But these weren't deprivations. They were investments in freedom. Every dollar not spent on lifestyle inflation was a dollar working toward financial independence. Every sacrifice today was buying me options tomorrow. The compound effect was becoming visible in my portfolio growth. By year 4, I had crossed $45,000. Year 5 brought me to $65,000. The mathematical beauty of compound interest was transforming small monthly investments into substantial wealth. Meanwhile, I was watching my family's financial reality with growing concern. Jessica's credit card balances were increasing faster than her income. She'd mentioned maxing out her cards during a particularly expensive vacation, laughing it off as temporary cash flow management. My parents were leveraging their restaurant properties to fund expansion, increasing their debt load. Just as the market was becoming more challenging, they were all earning good money.
Not bad.
They were also spending all the money they earned. Their net worth was either stagnant or declining, while mine was growing exponentially. The gap between our financial positions was widening every month. Even though they remained convinced I was the one struggling, the irony was becoming almost absurd. They worried about my financial security while building none of their own. They pitied my modest lifestyle while living paycheck to paycheck despite high incomes. They saw my discipline as limitation, while their indulgence was creating actual limitations on their future choices. But I wasn't ready to reveal the truth yet. Let them maintain their assumptions a little longer. The revelation would be sweeter when the contrast was even more dramatic. The promotion letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, crisp and official. We are pleased to promote you to senior financial analyst, effective immediately. Your new annual salary will be $95,000. After 5 years of steady performance and consistent results, the recognition felt earned rather than surprising. My military background had proven invaluable in the financial services industry. The same systematic approach that had helped me manage supply chains now helped me evaluate investment opportunities and assess market risks. While other analysts got caught up in market emotions or chased trendy investment strategies, I maintained the disciplined, data-driven approach that had served me well in the Navy. My track record spoke for itself. The portfolios I managed consistently outperformed benchmarks. It's not through spectacular trades, but through careful asset allocation and risk management. I had developed a reputation for thorough research and conservative projections that proved accurate over time. Clients appreciated my straightforward communication, style, and my focus on their long-term financial goals rather than short-term market movements. The promotion came with increased responsibilities and direct client interaction. I was now managing accounts worth millions of dollars, helping families and small businesses build wealth through the same principles I applied to my own finances. There was deep satisfaction in using my skills to help others achieve financial security. My family's reaction to the promotion was characteristically mixed. They were proud of my professional advancement, but puzzled by what they saw as my continued financial struggles. The salary increase was substantial, but from their perspective, I was still living in the same small apartment, driving the same old car, shopping at the same discount stores. "Congratulations on the promotion," Dad said during our monthly family dinner. "Maybe now you can finally get yourself a decent car." "The Honda runs fine," I replied. "Why would I replace something that works perfectly well?" Jessica shook her head. "Marcus, you're making good money now. You should enjoy it. What's the point of success if you don't live like you're successful?" What they didn't understand was that I was enjoying the success, just not in ways they could see or measure. Every month, the salary increase went directly into my investment accounts. My portfolio was growing faster than ever, approaching $85,000 and generating returns that exceeded many people's salaries. The discipline I'd learned in the military was serving me perfectly in civilian life. Wake up early, maintain physical fitness, approach challenges systematically, stay focused on long-term objectives. These habits made me effective at work and successful in my investment strategy. My colleagues at the firm noticed my unusual lifestyle, but respected my results. During expensive team dinners, I'd order modestly and skip the wine. During office discussions about weekend plans, I'd mention hiking trails, while others talked about expensive entertainment. But when it came to analyzing investments or presenting to clients, my preparation and insights earned universal respect. The promotion also brought exposure to high-net-worth individuals, whose financial strategies I could study and learn from. The wealthiest clients weren't necessarily the ones with the highest incomes. They were the ones who had consistently saved and invested over decades. They understood the difference between looking wealthy and being wealthy. The same distinction I was trying to explain to my family. One client, a retired engineer with a $2 million portfolio, drove a 15-year-old Camry and lived in a modest house he'd owned for 30 years. Another, a successful small business owner, told me she'd never owned a car worth more than $15,000, but had been maxing out her retirement account since her 20s. These people had achieved genuine financial independence through discipline and patience, not through high-profile consumption. Their examples reinforced my own strategy. The path to real wealth wasn't about earning more money, it was about keeping more of the money you earned and investing it wisely over time. My family was focused on the earning part while ignoring the keeping and investing parts. I was optimizing all three. The Instagram post appeared on a Sunday morning while I was meal prepping for the week. Jessica lounging on a beach in Maui. Designer sunglasses reflecting the ocean, cocktail in hand. The caption read, "Living my best life while some people clip coupons." Success is a choice. Hashtag, blessed hashtag. Living well hashtag. Some of us get it. The targeted cruelty was unmistakable. She'd tagged our location so all our mutual friends and family would see it. Within hours, the comments started rolling in from cousins and family friends. Laughing emojis and savage responses that made it clear everyone understood exactly who she was mocking. I stared at the post for longer than I should have, feeling something shift inside me. The gentle mockery had escalated into public humiliation. This wasn't family teasing anymore. This was deliberate social sabotage designed to reinforce her position as the successful sibling. While cementing my role as the family disappointment, Mom called an hour later. "Marcus, honey, did you see Jessica's post? I think she's just having fun, but maybe you two should talk. She's having fun at my expense, Mom. That's different." "Well, you know how she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. But maybe this is a good time to think about expanding your lifestyle a little. You're doing well at work now." The conversation was infuriating because it revealed how completely they misunderstood the situation. They saw Jessica's behavior as harmless sibling rivalry and my reaction as oversensitivity. They couldn't see that her lavish lifestyle was funded by debt while my modest lifestyle was building wealth. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in months. I calculated my exact net worth. Investment accounts, savings, retirement funds, minus my minimal debts, the number was $127,000. At 34, I had built more liquid wealth than most Americans accumulate in a lifetime. Meanwhile, Jessica's vacation photos were probably being funded by credit cards she was already struggling to pay off. Her success was largely an illusion maintained through borrowed money and strategic social media curation. The contrast was becoming absurd. She was mocking my financial discipline while maxing out credit cards. She was portraying herself as financially successful while living paycheck to paycheck despite a six-figure income. She was using social media to shame me for choices that were actually building the kind of security she thought she had, but didn't. But the public nature of her mockery had crossed a line. Family gatherings were one thing, social media humiliation was something else entirely. She was potentially damaging my professional reputation and personal relationships for the sake of a joke. I realized I needed to document my actual financial position. Not for revenge, but for clarity. The next time my family expressed concern about my financial situation, or offered unsolicited advice about my lifestyle choices. I wanted to be able to set the record straight with facts rather than arguments. Started taking screenshots of my account balances, printing quarterly statements, organizing documentation that would tell the real story of my financial progress. If they wanted to judge my choices, they should at least understand what those choices had actually accomplished. The time for hiding was coming to an end. Jessica's post had been the catalyst, but the underlying tension had been building for years. My family needed to understand that their assumptions about success, wealth, and financial security were not just wrong, they were exactly backwards. The 5-year performance report reads, like a testament to patience and discipline. Total return, 847% spanning market crashes, recoveries, and everything in between. While others panicked during downturns, I saw opportunities. While others celebrated during bull markets, I maintained perspective. My investment philosophy had crystallized into something elegant in its simplicity. Broad market diversification through low-cost index funds formed the foundation: 60% total stock market, 20% international, 10% bonds, 10% REITs. This wasn't glamorous or exciting, but it was mathematically sound and historically proven. The real advantage came from behavioral discipline. When COVID-19 crashed markets in March 2020, my colleagues were paralyzed by uncertainty. I was buying. When everyone was predicting economic collapse, I was systematically purchasing more shares at discount prices. When the recovery began and markets soared past previous highs, those purchases generated exceptional returns. But it wasn't just about market timing. It was about time in the market. Every month for 6 years, regardless of market conditions, economic news, or personal circumstances, I invested exactly the same amount. Dollar cost averaging meant I bought more shares when prices were low and fewer when prices were high, automatically optimizing my purchase prices over time. The compounding effect was becoming dramatic. My original $500 investment had grown to over $8,000 just from market appreciation. The monthly contributions that seemed modest individually had accumulated into a substantial base, generating its own returns. Money was making money, which was making more money, creating the exponential growth curve that most people understand intellectually but never experience personally. Real estate investment trusts provided diversification and inflation protection. While my family was worried about property values and mortgage payments, I owned fractional interests in hundreds of commercial properties generating steady dividend income. Technology stocks gave me exposure to innovation and growth. International funds protected against domestic economic downturns. The portfolio had survived and thrived through multiple market cycles: the 2018 corrections, the 2020 pandemic crash, the 2021 inflation concerns, the 2022 interest rate fears. Each challenge had been an opportunity to stay disciplined while others made emotional decisions that damaged their long-term returns. My investment research had become almost obsessive, but in a systematic way. I read annual reports, followed earnings calls, tracked economic indicators, and studied successful investor strategies. Warren Buffett's letters to shareholders were like scripture by wonderful businesses at fair prices. Hold them forever. Let compound interest work its magic. The difference between my approach and my family's was philosophical. They saw money as something to spend to demonstrate success. I saw money as something to invest to build security. They were focused on cash flow and appearances. I was focused on net worth and options. By my 6th year of investing, I'd crossed $100,000 in total portfolio value. The psychological impact of that milestone was profound. 6 figures. Felt like entering a different category of financial security. The money was generating enough investment income to cover several months of expenses. Financial independence was no longer a distant dream but a visible goal with a clear timeline. My family remained completely unaware of this transformation. They still saw my modest lifestyle and conservative spending habits as evidence of financial struggle. They couldn't imagine that someone living in a studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda could have built more wealth than most people accumulate in decades of higher earnings. The irony was beautiful. While they worried about my financial future, I was building exactly the kind of security they thought I lacked. While they spent money to look successful, I was becoming actually successful in ways that mattered far more than appearances. The next milestone was $250,000 true financial security that would provide options, flexibility, and peace of mind that no amount of designer clothes or luxury cars could match. The credit card statement was left on Mom's kitchen counter. It's probably by accident. Jessica Chen balance, $47,382.19. Minimum payment, $1,247 available. Credit, $2,617.81. The numbers told a story she'd never share willingly. I wasn't snooping. I was helping Mom with her laptop when I noticed the envelope. Seeing Jessica's financial reality laid out in stark numbers was jarring. Nearly $50,000 in credit card debt, maxed out across multiple cards. It's making minimum payments that would take decades to eliminate the balance. This was the person who'd been mocking my poverty mindset, posting about successful living. Her entire lifestyle was funded by borrowed money at interest rates that would make loan sharks blush. Every vacation, every designer purchase, every expensive dinner was adding to a debt load that was spiraling beyond her ability to control. The timing was particularly cruel because I was overhearing whispered conversations about the restaurant business struggling with post-pandemic challenges. Food costs were rising, labor shortages were driving up wages, and commercial rent increases were squeezing margins across all 15 locations. We might need to close the Riverside location, Dad was telling Mom in their home office. Not realizing I could hear from the kitchen. The lease renewal came in 30% higher, and we're barely breaking even there anyway. What about the Newport location? Mom asked. That one's been struggling since the new shopping center opened. Same story. Competition is fierce. Costs are up. Customer traffic is down. We might be looking at consolidating to 12 locations instead of 15. The restaurant empire that had seemed so stable and successful was facing the same challenges affecting businesses everywhere. High fixed costs, leveraged expansion, and thin profit margins created vulnerability that my parents had never fully acknowledged. But the real shock came during a family dinner. 2 weeks later, Dad looked exhausted, older than his 58 years. Kids, we need to discuss some family business matters. The restaurants are going through a challenging period. Jessica immediately went into crisis management mode. Are we talking about temporary cash flow issues or structural problems? Both, Dad admitted. We've had to take out a line of credit against the house to cover payroll for 3 locations. The bank is requiring us to personally guarantee additional business loans. The house I'd grown up in, the symbol of their success and security, was now collateral for business debts. We were risking everything to keep the restaurant chain operational. Mom's voice was tight with stress. We're not in immediate danger, but we need to be careful about expenses for the next year or two while we stabilize the business. Jessica's face went pale. I could see her calculating whether her job was secure, whether her salary and bonuses would continue, whether her lifestyle was sustainable. If the family business collapsed, the contrast with my own financial position was becoming surreal. While they were leveraging their home and taking on personal guarantees for business debt, I was approaching $150,000 in liquid investments, with no debt beyond my modest monthly expenses, while Jessica was carrying $50,000 in credit card debt and Dad was risking his home to cover payroll. I had built more financial security than any of them realized. While they were stressed about business survival, I was calculating how many years until complete financial independence, but I felt no satisfaction in their struggles. It was only sadness at how preventable their situation was. High incomes had created an illusion of security that disappeared as soon as those incomes were threatened. They had confused cash flow with wealth, appearance with substance, spending with success. They needed help, but they'd never accept it from someone they believed was financially struggling. The revelation was coming, whether I planned it or not. Their assumptions about my situation were about to collide with reality. The notification appeared on my phone. During lunch, portfolio milestone reached $250,000. 7 years of disciplined investing had created a $250,000 foundation that was generating its own substantial returns. The number felt surreal, transformative, and somehow inevitable all at once. I stared at the screen for several minutes, letting the magnitude sink in. This wasn't just money, it was freedom, options, security, the ability to make choices based on what I wanted rather than what I needed. The military had taught me about mission objectives. This felt like completing the most important mission of my life. The timing couldn't have been more ironic. My family was struggling with debt and business challenges. I had quietly built more liquid wealth than they'd probably ever imagined possible. While they worried about my financial future, I was approaching true financial independence. But the revelation was becoming inevitable. I needed to think carefully about how to handle it. This wasn't about vindication or revenge, it was about truth. My family's assumptions about success, wealth, and financial security were so fundamentally wrong that they were making decisions based on completely false premises. Jessica's continued social media mockery had become almost pathetic, given her actual financial situation. Her posts about successful living were increasingly desperate attempts to maintain an image that bore no relationship to her reality. She was criticizing my choices while making choices that were destroying her financial future. My parents' concern about my lifestyle was touching but misguided. They genuinely wanted to help someone they believed was struggling. But their definition of help spend more money, buy status symbols, prioritize appearances, was exactly the opposite of what had created my success. The question was timing and approach. Should I wait until they expressed concern about my finances again? Should I reveal the truth during their current business crisis? Should I let Jessica's mockery continue until it became completely absurd? Part of me wanted to savor the irony a little longer. There was something satisfying about knowing the truth while they maintained their illusions. But another part of me was tired of hiding, tired of being misunderstood, tired of letting them worry about a problem that didn't exist. The revelation would change everything about our family dynamics. I would no longer be the disappointing son who couldn't achieve normal success. Jessica would no longer be the only financially successful sibling. My parents would have to reconsider everything they thought they knew about wealth, success, and financial security. But it would also mean responsibility. Once they knew about my financial position, they might expect help with their business problems. They might ask for loans, investment advice, or partnership in their recovery strategy. I needed to be prepared. For those conversations, the military had taught me about strategic planning and tactical execution. This revelation needed both. I needed to choose the right moment, the right approach, and the right level of detail. I needed to be prepared for their shock, their questions, their potential requests for assistance. I started organizing documentation. That would make the story clear and undeniable. Account statements, investment performance reports, net worth calculations, evidence that would transform their understanding of my choices and their consequences. The moment was coming soon. I could feel it building like a storm on the horizon, inevitable and transformative. My family was about to discover that everything they thought they knew about success was backwards, and everything they thought they knew about my life was wrong. The only question was whether they would be ready to hear the truth. The text chain started innocuously enough. Jessica to the family group. I think we need to have a serious conversation about Marcus's situation. Mom replied immediately. I've been worried too. Maybe we can help him get back on track. Dad's response was characteristically direct. Sunday dinner. We'll figure this out. I watched the messages roll in with a mixture of amusement and disbelief. They were planning an intervention for someone who didn't need intervention, organizing. Help for someone who was more financially secure than all of them combined. The irony was so perfect it almost seemed scripted. Jessica's follow-up message revealed the depth of their misunderstanding. I've been researching debt consolidation, options, and budgeting apps. Maybe we can get him started with some basic financial planning. She was preparing to teach financial literacy to someone who'd built a $250,000 investment portfolio. Mom's contribution was equally misguided. I found some job listings for positions that pay better than his current role. Sometimes you need to prioritize income over personal preferences. She was worried about my income while I was generating more investment returns than many people's salaries. Dad's approach was more direct. We need to have an honest conversation about his spending habits and lifestyle choices. Sometimes tough. Love is necessary. He wanted to discuss spending habits with someone who'd been optimizing every financial decision for 7 years. The planning continued throughout the week. Jessica researched financial counseling services. Mom printed articles about career advancement strategies. Dad prepared talking points about the importance of professional image and networking. They were assembling resources to help someone who was already demonstrating exactly the kind of financial discipline they thought he lacked. The tragedy was that their concern was genuine. They really believed I was struggling, really wanted to help, really thought their intervention could improve my situation. Their love was real, even if their understanding was completely wrong. But their timing was particularly poor given their own financial challenges. Jessica, carrying $50,000 in credit card debt, was planning to teach debt management. My parents, who'd leveraged their home to cover business expenses, were preparing to discuss financial responsibility. They were offering guidance they desperately needed themselves. I considered several responses. I could decline the dinner, forcing them to be more direct about their concerns. I could attend and deflect their advice politely. I could reveal the truth immediately and skip the intervention entirely. But there was something compelling about letting them proceed with their plan. They'd put significant effort into organizing this conversation, researching solutions, and preparing materials. They deserved the opportunity to express their concerns fully before learning how fundamentally wrong those concerns were. Besides, the contrast would be more dramatic this way. Let them present their debt consolidation strategies and budgeting apps. Let them explain the importance of financial discipline and long-term planning. Let them offer career advice and lifestyle recommendations. Then show them what 7 years of actual financial discipline had accomplished. The revelation would be more powerful if they first committed fully to their misunderstanding. They needed to experience the complete absurdity of their assumptions before learning the truth. Only then would they understand how backwards their thinking about success and wealth really was. Sunday, dinner was 3 days away. I spent the time preparing my own materials, not defensive arguments, but simple documentation that would tell the real story. Account statements, investment performance reports, net worth calculations, facts that would speak louder than any explanation or justification. The intervention they were planning would become the revelation they never expected. Their attempt to help would become the moment they realized who actually needed help. The pamphlets were arranged on the dining room table like battle plans, debt consolidation made simple, building credit after financial setbacks, and career advancement for young professionals. Jessica had prepared for this intervention like a military operation, complete with printed materials and talking points. "Marcus, we asked you here because we care about you," Mom began, her voice gentle but determined. "We've all noticed that. You seem to be struggling financially, and we want to help." I settled into my chair, curious to see how far they'd take this. Jessica leaned forward, her expression mixing concern with barely concealed condescension. "Come on, Marcus. The studio apartment, the old car, the constant coupon clipping. We're not judging you, but it's obvious you're having trouble making ends meet." Dad joined the conversation with his characteristic directness. "Son, you're 34? Years old. Most men your age have houses, newer cars, some visible signs of success. Your lifestyle suggests you're either under-earning or overspending." The assumption was breathtaking in its confidence. They'd observed my choices, applied their own definitions of success and failure, and concluded I needed rescue. Imagine that someone might choose differently while achieving better results. "We've done some research," Jessica continued, pulling out her phone to reference notes. "There are debt consolidation services that can help you manage multiple credit cards more efficiently. The interest savings alone could free up hundreds of dollars monthly." I almost laughed. She was explaining debt management to someone with zero debt while carrying $50,000 in credit card balances herself. Mom produced more pamphlets, and I found several job postings that pay significantly more than your current position. Sometimes you need to prioritize income over personal preferences. Financial stability should be your top priority right now. They'd researched solutions for problems I didn't have while ignoring problems they did have. The cognitive dissonance was stunning. "Look," Dad said, adopting his serious business tone, "we're prepared to help financially if necessary. The family can support you through this rough patch, but you need to be willing to make some changes. Better apartment, professional wardrobe, reliable transportation. These investments in yourself will pay dividends." The offer was touching and infuriating simultaneously. They were volunteering to subsidize lifestyle changes that would actually damage my financial position while remaining completely oblivious to their own financial vulnerabilities. Jessica pulled out her laptop. "I've created a budget template. Based on your estimated income and expenses, if you stick to this plan and eliminate unnecessary spending, you could be back on track within 18 months. She was offering to teach budgeting to someone who'd been tracking every expense for 7 years, someone whose unnecessary spending had been systematically eliminated to maximize investment capacity. "The key is changing your mindset," she continued. "You're thinking like someone who can't afford things instead of someone who's working toward affording them. Success requires investment in your image and professional development. The irony was perfect. She was diagnosing a poverty mindset while demonstrating the exact mindset that had created my wealth. She was recommending the spending patterns that had created her debt while criticizing the saving patterns that had created my security. We're also concerned about your social isolation, Mom added. You decline family trips, avoid expensive restaurants, skip social events. These aren't just financial decisions, they're limiting your personal and professional network. They saw my strategic choices as social deficits, my discipline as limitation, my focus as narrow-mindedness. They couldn't understand that every declined invitation was an investment in future freedom. The intervention continued for another 20 minutes, each family member contributing their analysis and recommendations. They were united in their concern, confident in their assessment, and completely wrong about everything. Finally, Dad delivered what seemed to be their prepared closing statement. Marcus, we love you, and we want to see you succeed. But success requires acknowledging reality and making necessary changes. Are you willing to accept our help? They'd committed fully to their misunderstanding, presented their solutions confidently, and asked for my response. Time to show them what 7 years of actual financial discipline had accomplished. I pulled out my phone and opened my investment app. Before I respond, there's something you should see. I placed my phone on the table, screen facing up, showing my investment app's main dashboard. The numbers were unmistakable. Total portfolio value, $267,429.18. Below that, smaller but equally significant, today's gain plus $1,847.32 in total gain, $142,891.47. The silence was immediate and absolute. 3 faces stared at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. As if the numbers might change or reveal themselves as some kind of elaborate joke, Jessica spoke first, her voice barely a whisper. That can't be real. I swiped. To the detailed breakdown, individual account balances, investment holdings, performance metrics spanning 7 years of consistent growth, brokerage account, Roth IRA, traditional IRA, and taxable investments. All legitimate, all documented. All mine. Dad leaned forward, studying the screen like an archaeologist examining an impossible artifact. Marcus, this shows almost $300,000. Where did this money come from? 7 years of investing 40% of my income instead of spending it on lifestyle inflation, I replied, keeping my voice calm and factual. The same money you thought I was struggling to manage. Mom's hand covered her mouth. But ... Your apartment, your car, ... Strategic choices, every dollar. Didn't spend on housing, transportation, and status symbols went into these accounts. Compound interest turned those dollars into this. I gestured at the screen. Jessica's face had gone pale. This has to be fake. You can't build this kind of wealth on a financial analyst's salary. I opened my banking app showing checking and savings account balances, then my retirement account dashboard with its separate 6-figure balance. Want to see the monthly investment transfers? It's the automatic contributions that have been running for 7 years. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. Account statements, investment history, growth charts that showed the steady accumulation of wealth through disciplined saving and patient investing. But you live like ... Dad struggled to find words. You act like someone who doesn't have money. I live like someone who understands the difference between having money and building wealth. Every choice you criticized was an investment in this. Result: Jessica's shock was transforming into something like anger. Why didn't you tell us? Why let us think you were struggling? Because you weren't asking if I was building wealth. You were asking why I wasn't spending money. Those are completely different questions with completely different answers. I pulled out printed statements from my filing cabinet, documents I'd brought specifically for this moment. Here's the 5-year performance report. Here's my net worth calculation. Here's the projection for financial independence by age 42. Mom stared at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. Financial independence? What does that mean? It means my investments will generate enough income to cover all my expenses. I won't need to work unless I choose to. Have complete freedom to make decisions based on what I want rather than what I need. The magnitude of the revelation was settling over them like fog. Their assumptions about success, wealth, and financial security were collapsing in real time. Dad, picked up one of the investment statements, studying the numbers with professional attention. The returns here, these are consistently above market averages. Broad market diversification, low fees, consistent contributions regardless of market conditions. Dollar cost averaging over 7 years. The same strategy I recommend to my clients. Jessica was scrolling through her phone frantically. I need to see this verified. Show me your actual bank login. I handed her my phone with the banking app open. She navigated through account balances, transaction histories, investment transfers. Each screen confirmed what she didn't want to. Believe Jesus Christ, Marcus. You have more money than ... She stopped, the comparison hanging unfinished in the air. More money than what? I asked gently. More than any of us, Dad finished quietly. More liquid wealth than the restaurant business generates in profit. The room fell silent again as the full implications became clear. The person they'd been trying to help was the most financially secure member of the family. They'd been criticizing had created the kind of wealth they'd been trying to build through business ownership. Mom's voice was small and confused. But why live so modestly if you have all this money? Because having money and spending money are different things. This portfolio generates income. If I spend that income on lifestyle inflation, I stop building wealth. If I reinvest it, the wealth compounds exponentially. I pulled up a compound interest calculator on my laptop. At my current contribution rate and average returns, this becomes $500,000 in 5 years, $1 million in 10 years, but only if I maintain the discipline that built it. Jessica stared at the projection, then at her debt consolidation pamphlets, then back at the screen. I've been giving financial advice to someone who could pay off my credit cards with investment gains from a good month. Your advice wasn't wrong about discipline and long-term planning, I said. You just applied those principles to spending instead of saving. Dad leaned back in his chair, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen him. We've been worried about the wrong person. We've been trying to help someone who's already solved the problems we're facing. The revelation was complete, but the real conversation was just beginning. The loan application rejection letter sat on Jessica's kitchen counter like an accusation. Application denied. Debt-to-income ratio exceeds acceptable limits. She'd tried to consolidate her credit card debt into a lower-interest personal loan, but her financial reality had finally caught up with her carefully maintained image. $47,000, she said, staring at her credit card statements, spread across the table. How did I let it get this high? We were having coffee in her downtown loft 3 days after the revelation. The space that had once seemed like evidence of her success now felt like evidence of her financial vulnerability. The rent alone was eating a third of her income, leaving barely enough to cover minimum credit card payments, the same way most people do, I replied. Lifestyle inflation that matches income growth instead of wealth building that exceeds it. Her anger from Sunday had transformed into something more complex: embarrassment, curiosity, and a desperate need to understand. How she'd gotten everything so wrong? I was making fun of your coupon use while maxing out credit cards, she said. I was posting about successful living while destroying my financial future. The irony is so perfect it's almost funny. What's not funny is the interest you're paying. 24% APR on some of those cards means you're working just to pay banks for money you spent years ago. She pulled up her banking app, showing me the monthly payment breakdown. Minimum payments total $1,400 per month, but only $300 goes to principal. I'm essentially paying rent on old purchases forever. The mathematics of debt were as unforgiving as the mathematics of compound interest were rewarding. Her credit card balances were growing despite regular payments, while my investment accounts were growing because of regular contributions. Meanwhile, you've been building wealth this entire time, she continued. Every month I've been getting deeper in debt, you've been getting closer to financial independence. The contrast had become stark and undeniable. Her high income was consumed by debt service and lifestyle expenses, leaving nothing for wealth building. My modest lifestyle generated enormous investment capacity, creating security she envied but couldn't achieve without fundamental changes. Mom called while we were talking. Marcus, can you come over tonight? Your father wants to discuss some things at my parents' house. The mood was subdued and serious. Dad had spread business financial statements across his desk, the numbers telling a story of declining profits and increasing pressure. We need to be honest about our situation, he said. The restaurants are losing money. We've leveraged the house and the bank is asking for additional personal guarantees on business loans. Mom sat quietly beside him, looking exhausted by months of financial stress. We're not bankrupt, but we're vulnerable. One major equipment failure or lease dispute could push us over the edge. The family's financial reality was becoming clear. High gross revenues had masked thin profit margins and excessive debt loads. Their impressive business empire was actually a house of cards vulnerable to any significant shock. "We've been living off the appearance of success rather than building actual security," Dad continued. "The restaurants generate good cash flow when everything goes well, but there's no buffer for problems." It was the same trap that had caught Jessica, just on a larger scale. High income had created an illusion of wealth that disappeared as soon as that income was threatened. "The worst part is realizing how wrong we were about everything," Mom said. "We thought you needed help while you were demonstrating exactly the kind of discipline we should have been practicing." Dad looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, respect, mixed with regret. "You understood something we missed completely. The difference between earning money and keeping money." The revelation had shattered more than their assumptions about my financial situation. It had forced them to confront their own financial vulnerabilities and question everything they thought they knew about success and security. "So what happens now?" I asked. "Now we figure out how to dig ourselves out of holes we didn't realize we were in," Jessica said. "Maybe learn from someone who never fell into them in the first place." The family dynamics had shifted completely. I was no longer the disappointing son who couldn't achieve normal success. I was the family member who'd quietly built the kind of security they all desperately needed. My notebook is filled with investment education notes, handwritten observations accumulated over 7 years of learning. Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world, Einstein may be. Time and market beats timing the market. Your savings rate matters more than your investment returns. These simple truths had guided every financial decision I'd made. Now my family wanted to understand those same principles. Jessica had asked for a crash course in not being financially stupid, while my parents requested help understanding where we went wrong and how to fix it. We started with basics during Saturday morning coffee at my apartment. "Dad!" Jessica stared around my studio with new eyes, seeing strategic choices instead of limitations. "Act!" "This place isn't small because you can't afford bigger," she said. "Act!" "Because bigger would interfere with your investment strategy." "Exactly. Housing is most people's largest expense. By keeping mine minimal, I maximize my investment capacity. The money you spend on your lofts, extra space, and downtown location is money I've been investing for years." I showed them my budget breakdown on a simple spreadsheet: income, essential expenses, investment contributions, and a small amount for discretionary spending. The numbers revealed how disciplined financial management could transform moderate income into substantial wealth-building capacity. Dad studied the investment allocations with professional attention. "You're essentially paying yourself first, then living on what's left. Most people live first, then invest what's left. There's never anything left." By automating investments, I removed the temptation to spend money I should be saving. Mom was fascinated by the compound interest calculations. "So the money you invested in year one is now worth more than some people's annual salaries? The first $500 I invested is now worth over $4,000 just from appreciation, plus all the dividends it's generated along the way. That's why starting early matters so much. Time amplifies every dollar." Jessica pulled out her phone to calculate her own numbers. "If I'd been investing my credit card payment amounts instead of paying interest on debt, I'd have about $180,000 by now," I finished. "Compound interest working for you instead of against you." The mathematics were brutal, but educational. Every dollar spent on interest was a dollar that couldn't be invested. Every lifestyle upgrade was an opportunity cost measured in decades of compound growth. "The hardest part is changing perspective," I explained. "I've been trained to think about monthly payments and affordability. I think about total cost and opportunity cost. Your BMW lease might be $600 monthly, but it's also $72,000. Over 10 years, that could become $200,000 if invested instead." Dad was taking notes, applying business analysis skills to personal finance. "So every spending decision is really an investment decision. Money spent on lifestyle is money not invested in wealth building. With one crucial difference: lifestyle spending generates temporary satisfaction. Investment spending generates permanent security." We spent the afternoon working through their situations: Jessica's debt consolidation strategy, my parents' business, restructuring options, practical steps for reducing expenses and redirecting money toward wealth building. The irony is that we were doing everything backwards, Mom said. Spending money to look successful instead of investing money to become secure. Jessica was more direct. I was Instagram rich and actually poor. You were actually rich and looked poor. Guess which strategy creates real options in life? The conversation continued into evening, covering everything from emergency funds to retirement planning to the psychology of delayed gratification. They were eager students asking questions. That showed they were beginning to understand the fundamental principles I'd been applying for years. You know what's crazy? Jessica said, as we wrapped up. Your military discount lifestyle wasn't about being cheap. It was about being strategic. Every dollar you didn't spend on looking successful was a dollar working toward actually being successful. Dad leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slowly. We thought we were teaching you about success. Turns out you were demonstrating it the entire time. The shift was profound and permanent. My family finally understood that wealth building required sacrifice, discipline, and a long-term perspective that prioritized substance over appearance. They were ready to learn from someone they'd been. Trying to help the family budget spreadsheet created for them was a work of art. 3 separate tabs for Jessica's debt elimination plan, my parents' business restructuring strategy, and a consolidated family financial recovery timeline. It represented everything I'd learned about systematic financial management applied to their specific situations. Jessica's transformation was the most dramatic. She'd moved from her expensive downtown loft to a modest 2-bedroom apartment, cutting her housing costs by $1,800 monthly. The BMW lease was replaced by a reliable used Honda Civic, my recommendation based on 7 years of successful Honda ownership. I actually love this car, she admitted during one of our weekly financial check-ins. No lease payment, lower insurance, minimal maintenance costs. The money I'm saving goes straight to debt elimination. Her debt payoff strategy was aggressive but achievable, minimum payments on all cards, and every extra dollar toward the highest interest rate balance. Using the avalanche method, she'd eliminate her credit card debt in 32 months instead of the decades it would take with minimum payments alone. I calculated the total interest I would have paid, she said, showing me her projections. Over $85,000 just in interest payments. That's a house down payment I was giving to credit card companies. But the bigger change was psychological. Jessica had stopped seeing financial discipline as deprivation and started understanding it as empowerment. Every declined dinner invitation, every canceled subscription, every strategic choice was progress toward freedom rather than evidence of limitation. My parents' situation was more complex, but equally improvable. The restaurant business required operational changes they'd been avoiding, closing underperforming locations, renegotiating leases, reducing overhead expenses that had grown during profitable years. We were running the business emotionally instead of analytically, Dad admitted. Keeping locations open because we liked them, not because they were profitable. Maintaining expenses that made us feel successful, but didn't contribute to actual success. They'd closed 3 locations, consolidated operations, and reduced their fixed costs by 40%. The business was smaller, but more profitable, generating actual cash flow that could service debt and build reserves. More importantly, they'd separated their personal finances from business finances. No more home equity loans to cover payroll, no more personal guarantees on business debt. If the restaurants failed, they wouldn't lose their house. We're building the buffer we should have had all along, Mom explained. 6 months of business expenses in reserve, plus personal emergency funds, separate from business accounts. The family's financial education was ongoing. I'd introduced them to the same books, podcasts, and resources that had shaped my understanding of wealth building. They were learning the vocabulary of financial independence, asset allocation, dollar cost averaging, tax-advantaged accounts, compound interest. Jessica had opened her first investment account, starting with $200 monthly contributions to a target date index fund. It's not much compared to your portfolio, but it's a beginning. And now I understand why starting is more important than the amount. Dad was fascinated by the mathematics of retirement planning. We've been so focused on business growth that we never calculated how much we actually need for retirement. Numbers are sobering, but achievable if we start now. The weekly family financial meetings had replaced our traditional dinners. Instead of restaurant outings that cost money, we gathered at someone's home to review budgets, discuss investment strategies, and track progress toward individual goals. This is better than therapy, Mom said during one session. We're not just talking about our problems, we're solving them systematically. The transformation wasn't just financial, but relational. The family member they'd been trying to help was now helping them understand principles they wished they'd learned decades earlier. The dynamics had completely reversed, but in a way that brought us closer together rather than creating resentment. You know what I realized? Jessica said as we reviewed her debt elimination progress. Your military discount lifestyle wasn't about the military or discounts. It was about having clear priorities and the discipline to stick to them regardless of what other people thought. That was exactly right. The military had taught me about mission focus and tactical discipline. The discounts were just tools for maximizing resource efficiency. The real lesson was about choosing substance over appearance, long-term benefit over short-term satisfaction. Now my family was learning the same lessons, and their progress was accelerating because they understood the why behind the what. The Family Investment Club charter hangs framed in my parents' home office, a document we created 6 months after the revelation. The Chen Family Investment Club, monthly meetings to discuss financial goals, investment strategies, and wealth building. Progress. What started as an intervention for my supposed financial problems had evolved into a systematic approach to family financial health. Jessica walks into our monthly meeting carrying a folder of progress reports, her face bright with genuine excitement. I paid off the first credit card completely. $8,400 balance eliminated. The applause from Mom and Dad is heartfelt and proud. Her transformation has been remarkable to witness. The sister who once mocked my coupon use now price compares everything and celebrates small victories like finding quality clothes at thrift stores. Her Instagram posts feature debt elimination milestones instead of expensive vacations, inspiring friends who are struggling with similar financial challenges. 18 months until complete debt freedom, she announces, showing us her updated projection spreadsheet. And every dollar that was going to debt service starts building wealth instead. Dad presents the restaurant business report with confidence I haven't seen in years. 12 locations now, but net profit is up 40%. From when we had 15, turns out bigger isn't always better. The business restructuring had been painful, but necessary. Closing underperforming locations and reducing overhead had transformed the restaurant chain from a high revenue, low-profit operation into a sustainable, profitable enterprise that generated actual wealth instead of just impressive gross numbers. We're building the emergency reserves we should have had all along, Mom adds. 6 months of business expenses, plus personal emergency funds that are completely separate from business accounts. My own portfolio has crossed $340,000 driven by continued monthly contributions and strong market performance. But the number that matters most is the projection date. Financial independence by age 41. 1 year ahead of my original timeline. The beautiful part is watching compound interest accelerate, I explain, showing them my updated projections. The portfolio is now generating enough annual returns to fund a modest lifestyle entirely from investment income. We spend time reviewing everyone's progress and adjusting strategies based on changed circumstances. Jessica's debt elimination is ahead of schedule. My parents' business cash flow is stronger than projected. My investment contributions have increased with recent salary growth. But beyond the numbers, what's changed most dramatically is our family's relationship with money and each other. We've learned to separate net worth from self-worth, appearance from reality, short-term satisfaction from long-term security. You know what's funny? Jessica says as we wrap up the meeting. I used to think your lifestyle was embarrassing. Now I realize it was aspirational. You were demonstrating exactly the kind of discipline I needed to learn. Mom nods in agreement. We spent years worried about the wrong things. Worried about your image instead of celebrating your substance. Worried about your spending instead of learning from your saving. Dad's reflection is more pointed. We confused income with wealth, revenue with profit, appearance with achievement. You understood the difference from the beginning. The irony of our journey isn't lost on any of us. An intervention designed to help someone who didn't need help had revealed problems that did need solving. Family that thought it understood. Success had learned about success from the family member they'd been trying to teach. The best part is the options, I say, reviewing my financial independence projection. In 2 years, I'll be able to choose work based on passion instead of necessity. That's real freedom. Jessica smiles. And in 18 months, I'll be able to make choices based on what I want instead of what I owe. That's real progress. As We pack up our materials and prepare to leave. I realize this monthly meeting has become the most valuable family tradition we've ever established. We're not just managing money, we're building security, creating options, and supporting each other's growth toward financial independence. The military discount lifestyle that once embarrassed my family has become the foundation for their own financial recovery. Choices they mocked have become strategies they've adopted. The discipline they criticized has become discipline they practice. 6 months ago, they thought I needed financial help. Now they understand I was providing financial leadership. The revelation changed everything about our family dynamics, but in ways that brought us closer together and made us all more secure. The Chen Family Investment Club meets the first Saturday of every month, and our combined net worth grows every quarter. Success, it turns out, isn't about looking wealthy, it's about building wealth. And we're building it together.